Ah, fear. That fight or flight feeling that has ruined the lives of so many brave pairs of underpants. It's one of the strongest and most primal emotions that people can have, which makes it very fun to exploit. Video game developers realized this a long time ago, and they've been throwing scary stuff into their games ever since. Some things, though, are scarier than others. So I present to you the top 10 scariest things I've seen in video games. Just a heads up though, this list is going to be very personal, because honestly, making lists more generalized is, in my view, harder, more controversial, and just in general less fun. So these are all purely my opinions on what scares me personally. So let's get going. Starting off the list, we have something truly nightmarish. There's a lot of reasons why this guy is scary. First of all, his name. He is the Nightmare. Not exactly making him seem like a cute little kitten, which rightfully so, he's not. I mean, look at him, he's hideous. But more on that later. His arsenal mostly includes all manners of lasers, energy bombs, and, well, its face. But it does have one even more devastating trick up its sleeve: gravity. This thing has a device on it that allows it to manipulate gravity, meaning that attack methods using masked objects kinda don't work too well. Effectively, until its gravity device is disabled, you pretty much can only use your beams. Once it does get disabled though, a few missiles to the face is really effective. Eventually this strategy destroys its mask, revealing, oh my god! That's what makes this boss even scarier. That face. Add in the baby-like screaming that it suddenly starts making, and we've got a boss that's all sorts of creepy. Even better is when you fight the guy in Metroid Fusion, since his face will literally start oozing out of the mask, and will start decomposing once you start doing damage to it. While not strictly the scariest thing I've ever seen, the Nightmare is definitely all kinds of unsettling. But then again, we're just getting started. In Super Mario 64, there exists something so terrifying, so hideous, and so unexpected that it truly has to be Lethal Lava Land. Okay, let me clarify here. The level itself, I have no problem with. It's actually really well designed and very fun to play through. It's just that painting. Let me tell you guys a little story. Way back when I was just a teeny little lad, my parents would play Mario 64 with me. We'd all have our own worlds that we were good at. For example, I had Bob on Battlefield and Snowman's Land, Mom had Big Boo's Haunt and Hazy Maze Cave, and Dad had Wet Dry World and Shifting Sand Land. In this way, every world was divided amongst us, except one: Lethal Lava Land. This was for one reason. None of us wanted to go near that painting. Not even my dad. Which is saying something. Granted, I don't find it as scary today as I did back then, but still. It's a heck of a lot scarier than that piano, that's for sure. Is this a very personal entry? Yeah, but that painting is something that's managed to creep me out for a lot longer than I can even remember. That's the longest tenure of anything here, and certainly deserving of a spot. If you look at the Pokédex, you'll find that there is a lot more to the Pokémon than meets the eye. For example, Snorlax eats 900 pounds of food every day, Metagross has more brain power than a supercomputer, and Houndoom can burn you with a poison that'll hurt till you die. Wait, what? This is something that's fairly commonly known amongst Pokemon fans. The Pokédex is creepy. Now granted, most entries aren't that bad. In fact, on the whole, they're pretty interesting and add to the immersive feel of the Pokemon games. But there are those few few entries that really make me feel like someone at Game Freak has something wrong in the head. Let's go over some of my favorite Creepy Dex entries, shall we? Cacturn. If a traveler is going through a desert in the thick of night, Cacturn will follow in a ragtag group. The Pokemon are biding their time, waiting for the traveler to tire and become incapable of moving. Stalking people until they die? I'd call that creepy. Drowsy. It remembers every dream that it eats. It rarely eats the dreams of adults, because children's are much tastier. Eating the dreams of children. Also creepy. But the worst offender by far in my view, Chandelure. Being consumed in Chandelure's flame burns up the spirit, leaving the body behind. This thing doesn't just steal your soul, it freaking burns it as fuel. And that's only a few. There are also the Pokemon that steal people's souls, the ones that are people's souls, the ones that are just as depressing as they are creepy, and a whole bunch of other things that are just really weird for a kid's game. While the Pokédex is creepy, it's also only a small part of the game, and not all of it's bad. There are plenty of other things that are much more direct. What could possibly be more lethal than Robo Space Ninjas? Apparently, toxic space zombies. Now, the Toxic Ancient of Warframe is one of the 3 ancient enemy types, basically heavy zombies that buff their allies while debuffing you. For example, Ancient Healers periodically heal their allies, and Ancient Disruptors make your powers less, well, powerful. But the Toxic Ancient, he don't care about none of that crap. He just wants you dead. As its name would suggest, these guys attack using toxin damage, which has the effect of bypassing any shields you have and attacking your life points directly. They do this in 4 ways: through regular melee attacks, a toxic cloud that always surrounds them, giving a toxic damage buff to nearby allies, and the very highly damaging gas cloud that they can release, which will kill you if you're not prepared for it. Fortunately, these attacks only matter in melee range, so keeping your distance is safe, right? Nope! It has a grappling hook that it can shoot at you to bring you closer, which it usually follows up with the deadly cloud. The only completely safe way to deal with it is to snipe it, which, given that it's nearly constantly surrounded by grunts, is easier said than done. Admittedly, with careful execution, they're not too bad, but considering their sheer lethality, they're still very notable. I love the nighttime, being able to look up at the stars, the galaxies, and I'll just outright say it. Even without having played Majora's Mask, the moon from that game is beyond creepy. I mean, just look at that face. And you'd better get used to looking at it too, since the whole point of the game is trying to stop that thing from crashing into the planet. Because that thing is on a crash course, with Termina as its target. And if you fail your mission, it pretty much nukes the place, destroying all life in the land. No pressure or anything. However, what really makes it scary is its approach. It's gonna hit the planet, yeah, but it takes its sweet time getting there. And all the while, you're watching this giant, intimidating thing slowly come closer and closer to destroying everything. It really knows how to mess with your mind, which makes it all the more scary. Oh, and did I mention it got a redesign in Hyrule Warriors? That makes it even scarier? HD, man. Don't doubt its power. As far as sheer destructive potential goes, the moon is definitely very high up there. Not the highest, as we'll see later, but it's definitely very notable. Sometimes, just being scary isn't enough. You need that extra kick to make it that much creepier. And what better way to do that than to make it just as depressing as it is scary? Enter the Haunted Forest. Let me be your guide. You start out in a swamp that can be easy to get lost in. Then, you move on to this gothic bridge that you can't avoid, and then you have a fork in the road. One path takes you to the dry ice mines, an area with an ever-present fog, and for some reason a giant cathedral. Go the other way, and you're taken to the main meat of the area, which has all sorts of lovely landmarks that I'll be getting back to momentarily. Keep going down your designated path, and you'll get to the Sea of Black Tears, which is basically the source of all the world's sadness, and predictably insta-death if you go in. Along the way though, there's plenty of wildlife to greet you, such as sickle wraiths, the horses of the Grim Reaper, Gilitars, which you can ride for some reason, and the entirety of the Drowning Doom army. An average trip will greet you with gravediggers, zombie brides, the aptly named rat gut, and the disembodied heads of dead people. And that's without even mentioning the random things that are just scattered about. There's a ton of these. I mean, random graveyard, random abandoned house, random news tree, random face rock, random skull moon. The list goes on. But the worst offender of all here? The Wraith Tree. I'll let this thing speak for itself. All of these elements combine with the intention of making the Haunted Forest as scary as possible, and it more than certainly succeeded. If there's a game series with tons of scary enemies, it's Half-Life. I mean, you've got your head crabs, your barnacles, your combine overlords, everything from Xen to zombies, so on and so forth. But one thing is king here. Out of all of the things in Half-Life, the Nihilanthe is, in my view, the scariest. First of all, a quick visual analysis will show you 3 things worth noting. First, it has abnormally small legs, meaning that it can only move by hovering on some sort of machine. Second, it has scars from some type of surgery. It's never made clear what that surgery was, but those wounds did not heal well. And third, it has a freakishly large head, giving it the appearance of some sort of exaggerated baby. But while it may look like a baby, it certainly doesn't fight like one. The Nihilanthe only has one direct way to attack you, by firing highly damaging orbs of electricity at high speed. However, it has another ability, teleportation. No, not of itself. It can teleport you away from the fight, and it can teleport allies into the fight. It doesn't do this very often, but it's still dangerous nonetheless. The best part is, both of these attacks are hard to dodge, so it would be in your best interest to take it out quickly. Unfortunately, that's not an easy task. It has an energy orb shield surrounding it, and any orb that gets destroyed can be replenished by crystals in the room. Once all the crystals and orbs have been destroyed though, you can let loose all the firepower you've got. Which you're gonna need, since this thing has more health, literally, than a tank. And once you damage its body enough, you get to the real damaging part. It opens up its head, and you have to shoot its brain. Yes, in order to kill this thing, you literally have to shoot this thing's brain directly. Once enough damage is done, however, it will float up to the top of the battlefield and explode in a flash of light. However, it's not content to be silent while you're killing it. It will say a bunch of ominous, creepy things, including, but not limited to,
Win, you cannot win. Die, you all die, you all die. You are man. He is not man. For you he waits for you.
the Nihilanthe looks scary, acts scary, and speaks scary. But in all of those areas, it's outclassed by the things to come. Since this one's pretty obscure, quick background info. In Unreal 2 The Awakening, you play as a demoted space marine, going around looking for ancient alien artifacts said to be powerful enough to save humanity from a hostile alien race. Along the way, you meet another race of aliens, the Kai, who are essentially so weak of body and will that they have no option aside from enslavement. Anyway, you eventually gather all the artifacts, when it's revealed that their real purpose is to reawaken an ancient race whose DNA is stored in the Kai. So you fire it up, put a Kai in a containment cell, and this happens.
What's happening? Stay focused. Huge! What the hell is it? Now, cook?
Where to even begin with this thing? Well, first let's take a look at what it can do. The Tusk have three main ways of attacking enemies: impaling them with their spear-like legs, firing a laser at them from its eye, and its signature weapon, the Singularity Cannon. Let's talk about that, shall we? The Singularity Cannon is a weapon that pretty much is their right arm. It is the single most powerful weapon in the game for one reason. It shoots black holes. Anything unlucky enough to get shot by it is, beyond any shadow of a doubt, dead. So you gotta kill it before it kills you, which is easier said than done. There are two known ways to kill this thing. You could burn it alive by sending it to a star, or you could give it a taste of its own power. Yes, the only way you can kill this thing without needing a star is to literally blow its arm off, pick it up, and shoot it with its own appendage. But before it goes, it leaves you with a little parting gift. A mix of impossible power and incredible resilience makes the Tusk very scary, but still not nearly as much as this next guy. I'll be completely honest, I don't want to look at this thing in editing, but I want you guys to know what I'm talking about, so I'm willing to just not sleep for a few days to get the point across. Full disclosure, this segment is Gygas. Now, why exactly is Gygas so scary? First and foremost, the way it looks. It just can't be described. No, literally, I'll come back to that. As your fight with it goes on though, it becomes increasingly distorted. At a certain point, its form multiplies, starts moving, until eventually, the entire screen becomes a swirling mass of Gygas. As if one of them standing still wasn't bad enough. But equally as scary is the guy's backstory. To shorten a long story, he was tasked with destroying humanity in order to prevent the spread of an alien power, despite being raised by humans himself. Possessing a very great power, he leads an attack on the Earth, only to be stopped by a child exploiting his weakness for human emotion. And thus begins the scary part. After his defeat, he swore to return more powerful than before. However, as his power increased, his control over it didn't. His power became so destructive that eventually it destroyed his body, and later, his mind, leaving behind nothing more than what is described as pure evil. In this form, he has no control over himself, threatening the very existence of the universe. The only solution is to destroy him before he destroys everything. At that point, he and everything he does is completely indescribable by human standards. You cannot grasp at the true form of his actions. In addition to his mystery attacks, he periodically says random things, ranging from "it hurts" and "I feel happy," to just repeating your name over and over again. Eventually though, with the hopes and prayers of all humanity on your side, you defeat him and save the universe. But there's still one question left. What could possibly be scarier than the thing that could easily destroy all of existence? When I first came up with this idea, I knew Gygas would be number one. I had a hard time thinking of anything that could beat it. But then, it hit me. Gygas is mostly scary to look at. But this next and final entry achieves something much greater. It's scary to think about. Coming in at number 1 is the Rizzoli virus. This thing is, to put it lightly, the single most nightmarish thing I've ever seen from a game. Allow me to explain. The Rizzoli virus works in 2 stages. A dark stage, where it replicates itself inside of victim cells, causing small tumors to form near infected areas. Then, an active stage, where it forms colonies on organs and tissues, with more and more replication happening until the colonies burst, releasing the virus everywhere in the body. After this, the patient has 3 days, at most. From a diagnostic standpoint, Rizzoli causes a condition known in-game as a viral hemorrhagic fever, with its main symptoms being tumor formation, profuse bleeding, odd bruises, and eventual death. In other words, one of the most brutal deaths imaginable. However, it doesn't just affect the body. As seen in at least 2 cases, Rizzoli can also cause severe psychosis, which, in both cases, led to the victim murdering others based on hallucinations. The worst part, however, is how easily it is spread. It uses mucous membranes as its infection site, meaning that simply breathing in infected material is enough to transmit the disease. The result is an epidemic of unparalleled proportions. A cure is eventually found, which is enough to fix most cases. But the virus can continue to mutate, becoming even more twisted than ever before. In many ways, Rizzoli is scary. In how brutally it kills people, how easily it does so, and the scale at which it does so, Rizzoli shows just how terrifying diseases can be. And I haven't even gotten to the scary part yet. In-game, Rizzoli is classified in the Filoviridae family of viruses. That's an actual thing, meaning that if Rizzoli were real, its closest relatives would be the Marburg virus, and the even more commonly known and feared Ebola virus. These viruses cause what are known as viral hemorrhagic fevers, diseases which are known for causing fevers, psychosis, bleeding from everywhere possible, and in between 50 to 90% of cases, death. These diseases hardly have any treatments, let alone cures. Sound familiar? Now granted, Rizzoli does have several fictional aspects to it, which fortunately are highly unlikely in actual viruses and diseases. However, the point remains the same. It is a filovirus that managed to easily and massively spread through a populated area. To me, it serves as a reminder of the worst case scenario, when all hell breaks loose, and humanity is powerless to stop it. That, above all, is what I fear.